We live in a society of amazing stories, no matter if it's in the form of a folk tale, an adaptation of a previous work, a modernization of a past classic, or a new innovative idea that makes us rethink what's possible in life. There are a bunch of stories in the modern age of media that are beautiful works of art. With new movies and shows coming out week after week, month after month, we have a lot of media to think about and a lot of art for us to individually interpret. Something like this past season of anime that we just had in the winter 2022 season, where we had new IPs such as Blue Lock and Chainsaw Man coming out at the same time as beautiful continuations of existing stories such as Mob Psycho and Tiger and Bunny. It makes us question just a little bit, okay, even though this season has a lot of loved IPs and even continuations and just highly acclaimed and very popular stories, does that necessarily make this season one of the greatest that we've ever had? Or better yet, just questioning what makes a season great, or even on a more individual scale, what makes a show great? To me, there's a lot of things that go into what is universally and generally considered to be a great story, movie, or show, or just piece of art. But specifically for this video, I want to stick in the realm of animation, as that's what I consume the most of, as well as tends to be the theme of this channel in general. And if I would have to boil it down to anything specifically, the first thing that I would want to key in on is character writing. It's hard to boil down characterization and development into one thing that tends to lead to virality or perceived quality of a series, so instead, I'm just not going to do that. Instead, I want to detail further the difference between a show that is great and a show whose story elements are great. We can all agree that there's very few things in this world that are objective, and I'm not going to say that film is one of them, but there are things that narratively contribute to a story being perceived by the general audience as quote-unquote traditionally good. One of those things happens to be rounded characters with detailed motivations and consistent actions and themes that are portrayed in the story by their backstories, their dialogue, and their personality traits shown. But this doesn't necessarily create a great, or like the title says, generational show or series. When looking at the shows and franchises who have dominated and defined media, pop culture, or just American TV itself, we can create a short list of the characters who most resonate with audiences. These 7 characters are Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, Tony Stark from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Rick from Rick and Morty, Butcher from the recently acclaimed The Boys television series, Spider-Man, the Joker specifically from the Dark Knight trilogy, and Naruto. These 7 characters, you could argue, are the most universally loved, acclaimed, and praised characters in the last 20 years of media, and they are also part of shows and franchises that are all praised as generation defining experiences. So why is it that using the generally accepted well-rounded character definition that I had earlier, could you only argue that maybe like 3 out of the 7 names even fit into that criteria? Yet, like we said, these 7 names, you could very well make the argument that when it comes to the list of protagonists that are most popular, most loved, and most highly acclaimed, that these are those 7 names from all media in the past 20 years. That's because the ingredients for what makes a character good doesn't always lead to an amazing show or experience. Well, for starters, it has to do with how we perceive media in general. Most people, when they go to the theater, when they watch a show, the thing that is underlying to all of us is that we like to see ourselves represented or reflected on the screen, whether it be the skin color that we have, the philosophies we hold, the family that we grew up in, and just the shared things that make us us. It feels good, or it feels relatable to see those things portrayed on screen in one way or another. But also there is a balancing act that you get, because for a lot of people as well, when they go to the theater, when they sit down for a Netflix binge session, they like to escape. They like a level of fantasy that's different from the world that they live in every single day. These two diametrically opposed views of watching media go at each other. In most series and shows, one of the main tackling points in these writing rooms is finding that balance of relatable realism and also escapist fantasy that is going to keep putting butts in the seats. This comes in the form of taking vague aspects of people, slight underlying ideals or actions, and creating a character who epitomizes the craziness in us, or molding a person who represents the sporadic curiosity of the audience, or making the ultimate underdog who goes from zero to hero. It's finding this balance of creating the overall representative for the audience and creating a new experience or person for the audience to watch that creates a great show and propels stories to be a once-in-a-generational type of experience. Now, the second element that I'm talking about won't be nearly as long, I hope, because next I want to talk about the animation, or just the visuals of an amazing show. The thin veil that separates the stories or novels and folktales and the stories on the big screen and small screen is the visual aspect of it. Even in the era of silent film, the determiner that drove people to the theater was the ability to put their eyes on something and witness their imagination unfold through the lens of the original creator and storyteller. And even with the advent of technology, the methods of producing imaginative visuals has only continued to grow exponentially. This doesn't mean that every animated show for teenagers has to look like a fucking Pixar film, but it means that what's on screen has to match the story you're trying to tell in the world that you're attempting to create, whether that be one of your own imagination or portraying the one in our real life. If you have a magic system with the ability to harness elements into projectiles, then your cinematography better be on par with Harry Potter, Fire Force, or Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you're planning to tell a grounded story that's just a slice of one's life, then your visuals better be on par with the Spectacular Now or 5 centimeters per second. No matter what story you're trying to tell, stellar animation isn't mandatory. And a lot of these media don't reinvent the wheel of angles or how to hold a camera, they just shape their story the way it needs to be shown to keep the audience engaged enough till the finish. The other main aspect of a movie, a show, or just a series in the world that I would argue is very integral is the world building of said series. Especially in fictional stories, which take up a majority of generation defining shows and movies, a fully fleshed out world that an audience can imagine themselves interacting with is one of the core aspects of what makes a show at the very least memorable. Just think about how many TikToks or memes we've seen of people pretending to walk around in Gotham until they run up on the bat and get their shit knocked back. People love to imagine themselves in these worlds that we grew up watching. The reason why the expansive franchises of the world like the MCU, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Star Wars are so highly acclaimed and loved is because the viewers, us, we can imagine ourselves interacting with all the things that we see on screen because it's fleshed out over the course of movies, books, games, and other forms of media that all do a stellar job of building out this world, this setting that is so new and expansive to us that we can only help but imagine what we would do if we were put in the same situation. From establishing long lost power systems, exposing political landscapes, to showing all different fantasy elements and creating sci-fi spectacles, the more you show and connect your world beyond the main plot and story, the more your show can resonate with the imagination of the audience. The person sitting in their living room straight off of work watching your art thinking, damn, what would it be like to be in Asgard, Narnia, or Wakanda? No matter what age or stage of consuming art you are, it can take anyone out of their seat and into your story if you're able to portray a world that someone can get lost in, and it's something that can propel a series from being just good, just great, to being one that is remembered for an entire generation of people. The last two elements I want to talk about are really out of the realm of what creates a traditionally loved or traditionally great story. The first of these I want to talk about is hype. Let me ask you guys a question. If no one in the world watches your show or consumes your art, how great is it really? If the quality of art is subjective and the whole point of creating media is for it to be watched and consumed and discussed, and nobody knows about Shinji's adventures, then I'm sorry, bro. That shit must be ass. Now here's the caveat that I do understand. Now I'm sure most of you are running to the comments to say there are so many elements that go into creating hype for a series that it's basically uncontrollable from the standpoint of the storyteller. Everything from establishing initial popularity with the series, it depends on then the genre or the type of people that you're targeting with your show, and then that depends on whether that type of demographic is someone who's going to go tweet about it or just silently enjoy art to themselves. And then as a result of that, it doesn't generate any hype because everyone's just kind of sitting in the movie. This is cool. For example, the highest grossing film of all time has had almost zero hype for the past decade. Despite its importance to the modern film industry, its relevance in film history, and its groundbreaking results, just about zero hype on social media has resulted from this historical milestone. This has led so many people to question the greatness of this film in totality, and which is why, despite it being so successful, it's never heralded as one of society's generation-defining pieces of art. On the flip side, we have a show like Sword Art Online in 2013, which commanded hype so large that it superseded the anime community at the time and broke into mainstream culture, with it being one of the first isekai to strike a boom in the community and spread like a wildfire. But even at the time, the series didn't have crazy character writing, its plot wasn't necessarily impressive, there weren't any characters or anything that seemed to resonate with the audience. The power system has basically been replicated in American media several times, and although the circumstances of the show were relatively unique, it wasn't so far out of the realm of Tron, Black Mirror episodes, or fucking Wreck-It Ralph. But because of the hype, this show was able to progress from the anime community, or from people who simply were immersed in the video game world, or people who made real-life parallels to real-life technologies such as VR, or the 2003 video game Second Life, or to other forms of media such as Snow Crash's Metaverse. The show was able to grow in popularity and become the most hyped show, real life, animated, regardless of the entire year of 2012. An entire generation of anime fans grew into the culture with Sword Art Online, an otherwise mediocre television show being the show that defined an entire generation of anime fans. I'd also like to add on to the point that I was touching on earlier. If a piece of media can't reach an arbitrary amount of audience members and therefore be judged by a larger portion of society, can it even be judged as something that is so great and generation defining? Or even just isn't digestible to different types of people outside of this country, outside of this town, outside of this genre of people? I understand that there are things that, like I said earlier when I was talking about character writing, that are more digestible but aren't necessarily higher in quality. But doesn't that have to do with the quality of said series? For me, the adjustableness of a piece of art into any community is part of the reason why I leave some things off of lists, is the reason why I undervalue some series and some shows, because this can't be watched by X person, by X community, without them thinking that it's lesser in quality or without them getting offended. So therefore it's lesser in quality, because like I mentioned earlier, the point of people creating media, yes, you have a target audience in mind, but is for it to be consumed by the most amount of people. But I may be wrong, let me know in the comment section. The final element that I think adds to a show's generation defining ness, I guess that's what I'm calling it for the sake of this video, would have to be the production of said series. And what I mean by this is retreading the age-old debate of weekly, daily, monthly releases versus binge. With the advent of Netflix and streaming services in the early 2010s, a new wave of people and kids who had absolutely nothing to do with their lives sat and overindulged in shows like Grey's Anatomy, The Office, and other unfunny American sitcoms. This type of binging culture would only grow with Netflix's increasing dominance and continue to destroy the way that we consume media forever. Yeah, I fucking said it. Binging has only proven to be a way that destroys hype and kills conversation around highly acclaimed series. Anything from going to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to even something like On My Block. Even major successes on Netflix and other streaming services such as Stranger Things, you could argue have seen stunts in their social life cycles when they're talked about in conversations and in like social circles because of the bingeability of their series. In a hyper-moving and consumption culture like we are quick to move on to the next big thing. And when everyone is assumed to watch your show on one weekend in July, by August, it's as if your show never existed in the first place. The only show I can think that truly escaped this, in my opinion, Squid Games because of its cultural relevance, and it was also compounded by so many top figures in the world of media repurposing its content, or with other people just being fascinated by its success. Its cultural lifespan was much larger than any other series to be binged I've ever seen. And as a result of this, I'd have to say Squid Games is the only Netflix property I can think of to have this generational defining effect. Part of reaching that high of a ceiling for your medium is being significant enough, remembered enough, and relevant past your immediate release date, as well as the discourse surrounding your art. If your series or piece of media isn't remembered past 3 months of its release date because of people's brain moving so fast and consuming art at an all-time high, then I'm sorry, that calls into question whether your show or movie or whatever is truly supposed to be remembered as generation defining, or just such a high pedestal that it would be put in the same conversations as the shows or movies that have come before. So take that for food for thought as we see Netflix add ads back to its website. Well, not back, it never had ads in the first place, decrease the quality of its own page and just website by reassessing the levels of quality that you can get, while also increasing its prices at an alarming rate past the industry standards that have been set over the past 3 years, and as we see it just failing as a platform. However, this is it. These are the 5 essential elements that I think go into creating a generational show, series, movie, franchise, whatever. This is it. I think it's applicable in most situations, and especially in animation and fiction and fantasy, that I think it's almost transferable to everything. Let me know how much you guys agree or disagree in the comment section, and I will check it out. I reply to everybody except for that Young Justice video. There's like 500 comments on that shit. I can't do that. I'm sorry. Appreciate you guys though. Thank you for watching this video. Yeah, if y'all haven't noticed, I have a lapel mic. It's on my shirt now. I'm not using this bad boy. Well, I'll use it for streams. Watch my streams. I should be streaming more, you know, at the release of this video. I should be streaming more, even though I'm back on campus at the release of this video. So I appreciate you guys' support. Thank y'all for sticking with me, even through me dipping for 4 months and this comeback. I appreciate all the support. Hope you guys have a good day. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.